Well, after a splendid summertime of having fun in the sun, the kids are back at school. But for some kids, school can make for a miserable experience, and sometimes the playground actually resembles a battlefield. I speak of those students who are bullied. Their tormentors don't care about learning, but rather they love to pick on easy targets, be it verbally or physically, or both. Oh, sure, schools post signage these days declaring that there is zero tolerance for bullying. But those are hollow words. In fact, shockingly, schools and school boards have ample tolerance for bullying. In fact, school staff tend to go out of their way in terms of accommodating as opposed to disciplining the bullies. Welcome to our oh so progressive hug a thug society. It is nuts. And joining me now from Sarnia, Ontario is Jason Waddell. Last year, Jason's young son, Jonathan, was beaten by a bully to such an extent that he had to be rushed to hospital on two separate occasions. And how was this bully disciplined, you might ask? Well, that's the crux of the matter, folks. There was no discipline dispensed whatsoever. Unbelievable. So, Jason, thank you so much for making time for me. Hope you're doing well. But take us back to the previous school year and tell me what your son Jonathan had to put up with when he was attending St. Matthew Catholic School in Sarnia.
Yes, thank you, David, for having me. Well, he was attacked on three separate occasions. The third being the most damaging, well, it was unbelievable. I got a call from the principal, and it was this commenced on the last day of school. It happened on a Thursday, June 27th, this year, 2024. And his exact words to me were, in a very nonchalant kind of a way, that your son is having difficulty breathing and he's indeed unconscious.
Wow.
So of course my wife and we went right to the school, and Jonathan was the ambulance was already there. He was already on a stretcher. I went with Jonathan inside of the ambulance, and we of course went to the Sarnia hospital, and he was at that point in time he was unconscious. He was in critical condition. Well, this was the third attack by his bully. There was something that had happened on the field, and the same bully was having some issues with other students. And when they got inside the school, that is when this bully attacked my son inside of the school. He was hit in the solar plex by this bully, and he was sent into the principal's office, where he was telling Principal Mark Tremblay, I can't breathe. I'm having trouble breathing. And Jonathan was ignored, and then he collapsed just after leaving the principal's office.
Unbelievable. And of course, there's crime and there's punishment, but that's the crux of the matter. There really is no punishment here. You have advocated for your son on several occasions. You've reached out to the school board, and one of the primary concerns that you have, rightfully so, given that you are the father, is what are you going to do to ensure the safety of my son? What are the repercussions for the bully who is sending my son to hospital on more than one occasion? And what did you encounter, Jason?
Absolute and complete non sequiturs. As a matter of fact, when at the hospital on that day, on the 27th, when Jonathan was put in the hospital, the principal did come down, and we argued several times outside of the hospital, and came very clear to me that the principal, for reasons I will never be able to uncover, went right into protecting this other student, Jonathan's bully. That seemed to be, and at no point in time, too, did Mark Tremblay offer any sort of sympathy. He was very indifferent. I can't emphasize the smugness of Principal Mark Tremblay. At no point in time did he show much concern whatsoever about Jonathan, to be honest. It's a zero tolerance to discipline, is really what it really is. It's a failure to truly educate Well, they said to us, what we're going to, when I asked the direct question, what are you guys going to do about this? And it was all education. It was all, it's really just an echo of, um, policy. Like I talked from, like I brought this all the way up to the director of education. And it was pretty much talking, even though I talked to about four different people from, within the purview of the Catholic school board system, it was like talking to bureaucrats. It went nowhere. It went nowhere pretty fast.
Speaking of Principal Tremblay, you reached out to him in the summertime, and you had the due diligence to record your call. It's about an 18-minute phone call, so we can't play the whole thing. But here's a 1-minute excerpt. And basically, I think the lack of empathy, the lack of compassion, the lack of leadership, it comes across in this snippet of a conversation you had with him. Let's roll it.
But if these policies that are just not working, you're going to have a kid on your hands in the playground that's going to be dead. Then what are you going to do? You think it can happen? If you keep coddling these bullies like you're doing, sir, it's going to happen. You might want to keep that in mind.
Okay, do you have any other questions or comments on the plan then?
Yeah, what are we going to do about Jonathan's bully?
That's been answered, sir.
No, it hasn't. If it happens a fourth time, what are we going to do?
By the way, I should tell you and our viewers, I reached out to him by email, by voicemail, and the relevant school board. Crickets, they won't even acknowledge my calls and emails. And I'll tell you what my questions were. Here were the 4 questions that remain unanswered. Number 1, why is the bullying of Jason's son being tolerated if your board has a zero tolerance policy regarding bullying? 2, what is the point of such a policy if there are no repercussions for the bully? 3, what is your board's ostensible policy reason for accommodating bullies? And 4, why was Jason allegedly told that he should switch his son to another school? If this anecdote is indeed accurate, is this a routine policy move for your school board? Like I said, crickets. And, Jason, let's talk about question number 4, which is unanswered like my other questions. Somebody at the school actually had the chutzpah to say, just move your son to another school, which I might add you ended up doing because it looks like the educrats and the cowards at that school have no intention of making it a safe place for your son. Can you tell us about that conversation and let us know how Jonathan is doing at his new school?
Well, that is true. Someone from the office did kind of let me know that, hey, since it's the last day of school, there will be no punishments for this for the student. And yeah, it's absolutely frustrating when I go back and think about it. But going for right now, Jonathan, unfortunately, he did have to go to, or maybe I should say, fortunately, did go to another school. He's doing well. He's made a bunch of new friends and is settling in quite nicely, academically and spiritually. Part of the reason why they don't want to do anything, I think, is because they figure, oh, well, the students are just so young that it just doesn't matter. That's scary because at what point does it matter? I mean, these kids will be, considered adults not that long from now. So I think the time to educate, and these are so-called educators, right, in the Catholic School Board, the time to educate is now, not later on. And as mentioned before, too, in my son's case, this was not a one-time off. This had happened 3 times. The first time should have been the first and only time. It should have been it. I've never heard from the parents. They've never come forward. I could pass them in the street. I wouldn't know who they were. And the first time, Jonathan was kicked in the groin. The second time, Jonathan was kicked in the groin again by the same kid. And so Mark Tremblay said to me, well, this kid is, he's impulsive and he didn't mean to kick your son in the groin. What, twice? twice. And then the third time, I said, well, this can't happen a third time. Well, the third time, it's curious because we were on that day where Jonathan was attacked. We were on our way, and this is true. We were buying the school, the office, donuts and coffee. And I kid you not, just before we got to the Tim Hortons, I got the call. And again, the perfunctory uh, call from Mr. Tremblay that Jonathan was indeed having trouble breathing and unconscious. And again, right from the get-go, there was never much of a concern for Jonathan. It was, how can I protect this other kid? And I quite frankly, I'm not smart enough or intelligent enough to understand why they would go out of their way to protect this kid. I would just like to say one last thing that someone from that office, the St. Matthew's School, did say to me, retorted saying, "Hey, Jason, don't think that it's only your son being bullied," as if as if this was sort of like the knockdown, knockdown argument. And it's sort of like, well, that just enhanced my argument. Thank you very much. But no, I am happy that Jonathan is, is in a much better school.
Wow, what an incredible anecdote. I guess they work along the lines of misery loves company. No, misery should be eradicated, especially when you're at a school and you're meant to learn, not to get punched up and kicked and what have you. Jason, thank you so much. Good luck on your litigation. Keep in touch. And I wish you and your son, Jonathan, the very best. Thank you.